Hello and welcome to my SPSS tutorials. I'm Dr. Megan St. Peters, and today I'm going to show you how to do a repeated measures t-test. Okay, so I'm going to pull up SPSS and I'm going to pull up my scenario so we can see it. Okay, so for a repeated measures t-test, that means we need to have a within subjects variable with only 2 levels. So we could even just see in the table here, I'm going to have before and after. So let's read the scenario and see what this is about. A researcher is interested in whether participating in sports positively influences self-esteem in young girls. She administers a self-esteem inventory before and after a season of playing soccer in girls who had never played a sport. The inventory is measured using Likert questions, and higher numbers indicate higher levels of self-esteem. The scores are normally distributed. This is just a small sample size for demonstration purposes only. Okay, so we have before and after, and the numbers we're seeing are their self-esteem scores, and higher means better self-esteem. So we need to first put our data into SPSS. So within subjects variables, how you input the data into SPSS differs. So we've always been putting in between subjects variables up to this point, but this is a within subjects variable. So this is our within subjects variable is time, and it has 2 levels, before and after. You will have that many columns in SPSS depending on the number of levels. So since we have 2 levels of our dependent variable, we will be entering 2 columns of data. And so what will happen is we could just copy and paste exactly as is. So I'm just going to copy it, and then I'm going to go to my SPSS and I'm going to just paste it. So that's how it would be entered for a within subjects variable. So we have our befores and our afters of self-esteem. Then you're going to go to variable view, and we just want to change it to the levels, the names of the levels. So this is before and after. So you actually don't write out what your dependent variable is. Now both of these are scale. So I'm going to change my measures. All right, so my variable view is set up. I have the name, make sure they're numeric, and then there's scale. And so that should be the same for both of them, and we don't need to enter any values. So going back to my data view, now I can see that they're labeled, and we have our 2 levels. So now we're ready to analyze it. So we're going to go to Analyze, Compare Means and Proportions, and Paired Samples t-test. So Analyze, Compare Means, and then Paired Samples t-test, because they're repeated measures t-test, Paired Samples t-test. It just really depends on what textbook you're using, but they both mean the same thing. So we're going to put both of these into pairs. I think it makes sense to put before as variable 1 and after as variable 2. So we'll just click on both of those, put them over here. That's the only ones you really have. We don't really need to check anything else. You don't have to change any options or bootstrap, and then make sure your estimate effect sizes is selected and that standard deviation of the difference. Once those are set up, you click OK. And here's our repeated measures t-test output. We'll see in the first output it says a paired sample statistics. We get our mean of each. So the before and after playing sports, that's their mean self-esteems. So we only had 6 girls who did this study, and then we get our measures of variability, standard deviation, and standard error of the mean. So it went up from 42.33 to 43.83. So is that a statistically significant difference? We will have to go on to see. We won't be reading anything from the paired samples correlations. We're going to go to the paired samples t-test. So with the paired samples t-test, what we need to look at is actually going to be, you're going to start over here. You're going to use this t-value, the degrees of freedom. We need to know if we have a 1 or 2-sided p-value, so that depends on your hypothesis. And so we need to see if she felt that there would be an improvement, or, yeah, she wanted to know if it positively influences self-esteem. So we could say that we want to use a 1-tailed test. That would be directional. So we have our t, our degrees of freedom, our 1-side p-value, and then we will also need to report, here's our confidence interval, so we'll use that as well. And then we'll need our effect size, which is in the paired samples effect sizes. We will use a point estimate for Cohen's d. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly highlight these numbers that we're going to be using in our write-up, so that when I pull up an example write-up, you'll see where I get all these values from. So those values, and then also our point estimate. Okay, so reading our p-value is smaller than 0.001. That means it is statistically significant because it's below 0.05. So there is a difference in self-esteem, and as we can see, the number went up from 42 to 43, so it did positively improve their self-esteem for playing in sports or in soccer. Perfect. Okay, so this would be all we would need for a write-up, but it would be better to have a figure to go along with this. Usually within subjects, factors or variables or studies would go with a box plot. So we're going to go ahead and go to graphs and box plot. We want simple, but we need to change this to summaries of separate variables, and that's because each level of our one variable is represented as a separate column in SPSS. So simple and summaries of separate variables, click define. Just put both of your levels into the boxes and click OK. All right, so we will have to modify this as well to make it in APA format. So I'm going to double click on my graph. It opens up my chart editor. First, I'm going to just go to options and hide my grid lines. And then I need to add an axis label for the Y because it looks a little empty. There's multiple ways you can do this. I'm going to see how they're selected on my Y-axis. I'm going to double click on them. And that way I can go to labels and ticks and display X-axis title and click apply. And now I have one up here. You could also do it down here as well if we wanted a value, but I think before and after is descriptive enough, but we could make these bigger. So see how they're now highlighted? We could make them larger. And for value, we need to change that to self-esteem. So to click on that, you single click it once and then you click on it again to be able to write on it. So self-esteem. Now your axis label should be in title case but not bold, so I'm going to unbold that. And then this would be good for APA format, so I'm going to click the X and get out of it. And now we have our graph as well. Okay, so I'm going to right click on the graph, copy it as an image, and that way I can paste it into my Word document. And then I'm going to go up here so we can see where we get all these numbers from. Okay, so I copied that figure, so I'm going to now go and just paste it. I like to do it as an image. It allows you to just manipulate that image. So again, when you're doing APA format, you should type in the figure number that's bolded, the figure title, which is not bolded, but it's italicized in the title case. Put your figure, and then below that you'll have note being italicized and everything thereafter just in a complete sentence. So that's our figure, and now we need to look at our write-up. Okay, so let's try to do this. Let's see. There we go. Let's see if I can make it bigger for us. Here we go. A correlated group's t-test examined whether participating in sports positively influenced self-esteem in girls. It was statistically significant. And we have a lowercase italicized t that lets people know you've conducted a t-test. And then the degrees of freedom, which are 5. I got it up here from this table. And then the obtained t-value, which is negative 6.1, which I got from right over here. The p is smaller than 0.001. You write exactly what you have in your SPSS. You don't round the p-value. It's the only one you never round. And then you got your effect size, which was the rounded 2.74. Notice I didn't put the negative because effect sizes, the negatives and positives don't have any meaning, so that doesn't matter. And then your confidence interval, which we got from the 95% confidence interval of the difference. So that's posted there. And then we state that it was a one-tailed test. So that means the null hypothesis was rejected. As shown in Figure 1, sports participation positively influenced self-esteem in girls. And then we got our figure below. So this is how you would write up that data that you have presented in SPSS. All right, thanks for watching.